She watched it unfold in real time, her partner on red carpets, laughing with another woman while the world whispered something's going on. For 2 years, Gigi Paris said nothing. No interviews, no callouts, just silence. But behind that silence was a storm no one saw coming. Now she's finally breaking her silence. And what she reveals isn't just about heartbreak. It's about betrayal, public humiliation, and the gut-wrenching feeling of watching someone you love act like you never existed. She doesn't say his name. She doesn't have to. Everyone knows she's talking about Glen Powell and his too close for comfort chemistry with Sydney Sweeney during the Anyone But You press tour. This isn't your typical Hollywood breakup. This is the story of a woman pushed to the background while rumors took center stage, and a man who never stood up for her when it mattered most. You've heard his side. You've seen the headlines. But now, you're about to hear the truth. From the one person who lived it in silence. And it changes everything. Gigi and Glen weren't just a fling. They were together for 3 years, sharing private moments, planning a future, even talking about forever. But in April 2023, it all came crashing down. The timing? Too precise to ignore. It was right in the middle of Glen's high-profile press tour with Sydney Sweeney. That tour didn't just promote a movie, it ignited a wildfire of speculation. Flirty interviews, inside jokes, paparazzi photos that felt too intimate. Fans weren't just shipping the on-screen couple, they were convinced something real was happening off-screen. And all the while, Gigi stayed silent. No cryptic tweets, no public arguments. Just quiet distance, until she was gone. But now we know, her silence wasn't surrender. It was a decision. Gigi says the world kept asking, is she okay with this? Are they hooking up? What's really going on? And the truth? She wasn't okay, not even close. Behind the scenes, she was watching everything unravel, and the man she loved wasn't stopping it. What happened during that press tour wasn't just uncomfortable, it was the final push that made her walk away. But the heartbreak didn't end there. Gigi Paris didn't leave because she wanted attention. She didn't leave to make a statement. She left because staying meant slowly erasing herself. She described the moment with heartbreaking clarity. She had 2 options: pretend nothing was wrong, smile through the questions, and let the world assume she was fine with the rumors, or stand up for herself and walk away from the man she once thought she'd marry. There was no middle ground, so she walked. And when she did, the headlines twisted the story. Some called it a PR move. Others claimed she was bitter, jealous, trying to ride the wave of Glen and Sydney's rising fame. But Gigi shut all that down with one brutal sentence. I was shattered. Not angry, not vengeful, shattered. That word carried the weight of years, of shared dreams, of quiet sacrifices made behind closed doors while cameras captured only half the picture. This wasn't about being replaced. It was about being erased. And the worst part? It wasn't just one moment that broke her. It was the slow realization that the person she loved was no longer fighting for her. But what Gigi said next exposed something even deeper. Even before the cameras caught Sydney and Glen side by side, Gigi says things weren't perfect. There were cracks, distance. Conversations that used to feel effortless started feeling rehearsed. But what hurt the most wasn't what happened behind closed doors. It was what happened in public while she stood by watching. Respect. That's all she wanted. Not flowers, not apologies. Just the decency to not be humiliated in front of the entire world. Don't make a fool out of someone you've been with for over 3 years, she said, her voice calm but trembling. This wasn't just a boyfriend. This was someone she'd imagined a future with. Someone who once spoke about marriage and building a life together. And yet when the cameras came out, when the spotlight hit, she felt like she was nothing more than a forgotten chapter. The worst betrayal wasn't the rumors, it was the silence that followed. No reassurance, no public support. Just a growing void between them, filled with speculation and silence. And when she needed him to speak up, he disappeared. But that wasn't even the most painful part. In any relationship, silence can be louder than words. And for Gigi, Glen's silence spoke volumes. As the rumors intensified and fans began shipping Glen and Sydney like they were Hollywood's next golden couple, Gigi waited. Not for a grand gesture, not for drama, just a sentence, just a moment of clarity, just something, but it never came. He never said, I didn't cheat. He never said, I'm committed. He never said, "Gigi is my girlfriend, and I love her." And that silence? It felt like abandonment. She wasn't asking him to choose sides. She was asking him to protect her from the storm that was spiraling out of control. But instead of taking a stand, Glen let the world paint its own picture. And he stood by as Gigi was cast as the forgotten ex, the silent shadow. "The bare minimum in any relationship," she said, "is having your partner's back. Period." But in her moment of need, he wasn't there. Not once. Not ever. And the longer he stayed silent, the louder the damage became. Still, Gigi held on to one final hope, that maybe deep down he'd come forward and tell the truth. But what happened next shattered even that. Gigi never asked for fame. She didn't want a spotlight. She didn't even want sympathy. All she ever needed was a small, public truth, something so simple it could have silenced everything. Just say, "I would never cheat on my girlfriend." That's it. That's all she was waiting for. But Glen never said it. And that silence wasn't just disappointing. It was devastating. Because for Gigi, it wasn't about what people thought. It was about what he didn't say when it mattered most. When the world questioned her worth, when headlines reduced her to a side character, when fans turned speculation into certainty, he said nothing. And that silence let everyone else fill in the blanks. People assumed she was okay. They assumed she didn't care. They assumed she'd been replaced. She hadn't. She'd simply been silenced. Gigi wasn't looking for public validation. She was looking for basic respect. From someone who once promised her forever. And when even that crumbled, it wasn't just the relationship that ended. It was her belief that he would ever choose her over the noise. But what came next proved she was far from the only one feeling forgotten. This wasn't just about Gigi. Not anymore. Her voice, shaky but sure, carried something deeper. A message every woman who's ever been sidelined can feel in their bones. Because her story? It isn't rare. It's familiar. Too familiar. How many women have stood quietly behind a man chasing success, only to be pushed further and further out of the frame? How many have smiled through the pain, hoping he'd defend them, only to be met with silence? How many have watched the person they loved morph into a stranger under the spotlight? Gigi's heartbreak echoed louder because it wasn't just personal. It was universal. She became the symbol of what it means to be loyal to someone who won't speak up. To sacrifice in silence while they rise, only to realize you were never really part of their story. Just a footnote. And yet, she walked. She chose herself, not because it was easy, but because no one else would. And in doing so, she gave voice to countless others who've swallowed their pain to protect someone who wouldn't protect them back. But what happened after she left was something no one expected. Not even her. When Gigi finally spoke, she didn't throw punches. She didn't name names, drag reputations, or spill private secrets for clicks. She didn't need to. Her words cut deeper than scandal. They were honest. She spoke from the wound, and that honesty hit harder than any headline could. Because this wasn't just a breakup. This was a woman realizing, publicly, that she'd been treated like a placeholder. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't dramatic. She was just done. "I wanted respect," she said. "Not attention. Not fame. Just respect. The kind you expect from someone who once held your hand through every chapter, who whispered promises of always and forever when no one else was listening. But instead of defending her, Glen stayed quiet. Instead of clarifying the chaos, he let it grow. And instead of telling the truth, he let the silence speak for him. Now Gigi's voice is the one being heard. Not because she's loud, but because her pain is real, and her strength is louder than any denial he never gave. She ended her silence with grace. But the impact? That's still unfolding. Because sometimes the most powerful story isn't told with rage. It's told by the one who walked away and never looked back. Gigi's story didn't happen in a vacuum. It played out on the grand stage of Hollywood, where reputations are curated, images are polished, and silence is a marketing strategy. And when you zoom out, it becomes painfully clear. This isn't just about one relationship. It's about how the industry handles women who refuse to play along. When Glen and Sydney hit the promo circuit, their chemistry was celebrated. Interviewers flirted with the idea of a real-life romance. Fans fed the fantasy. Executives probably saw dollar signs. But where did that leave Gigi? In the shadows, reduced to speculation, excluded from the narrative entirely. That's the game. Men get praised for being charming and desirable. Women get labeled jealous or emotional for setting boundaries. Glen was framed as the heartthrob. Sydney became the it girl. And Gigi? She became the girl left behind, expected to be quiet, expected to smile, expected to move on. But she didn't. She called it out. Not with accusations, but with grace. Not with blame, but with truth. And in doing so, she exposed something far bigger than one relationship. She exposed a system that celebrates male freedom and punishes female boundaries. She wasn't asking for sympathy. She was demanding recognition, for every woman erased by someone else's spotlight. But the final twist? It didn't come from him. It came from her voice, rising above the noise. And what she left us with was impossible to ignore. In the end, Glen Powell never responded. No post, no interview, no denial. Just the same polished smile and rising fame, untouched by the emotional wreckage left behind. And that's what makes Gigi's story so haunting. It wasn't the cheating rumors. It wasn't the red carpets or the flirtatious press clips. It was the silence. That cold, calculated silence that allowed everyone else to decide the truth for her, to write her out of the picture, to act like she was never there to begin with. But Gigi's voice, shaky as it was, cut through that. Because there's something unforgettable about a woman reclaiming her story, especially when the world tried so hard to rewrite it. She didn't scream. She didn't beg. She didn't post thirst traps or throw shade. She simply told the truth. And it stung, not just for Glen, but for anyone who's ever let someone they love drown in the silence just to protect their own image. In the quiet aftermath, one thing remains clear. Sometimes the loudest betrayal is what's never said. And sometimes the strongest move you can make is walking away without needing applause. Gigi Paris didn't just leave Glen Powell. She left behind the silence. And in doing so, she made sure the world finally listened.